some curious folk. How does the way that we define God affect the way we ought to live? Asks one of you. And I think about, the descriptors that you have in your mind for who God is for you, I think reflects back a little bit on how we see people in the world and how we see ourselves. So if you have an all-loving God, then you probably see people as being pretty loving. It's that story that, we've all told it probably, at some point or another, where there's two towns that separate one another by a valley, and a man is on his way to the town, and he stumbles across a monk who's gardening in that town, and the traveler says, "What's it like in that village up there? I've never been there." And the monk says, "Well, how was the town that you came from?" And he goes, "Oh, those people were terrible. They were mean and stingy and angry and upset and resentful, and they didn't have anything nice to say. I couldn't wait to get out of there." And the monk said, "You will find the people in the other town just the same." And another traveler's coming through the same way, and he says, "How are those people in that town up there? I've never been to that town up there, Mr. Monk." And the monk says, "Well, how was the town that you came from?" "Oh, man, they were so loving. They fed me and nurtured me and helped me see that the world is just this great loving place." And he goes, "You're going to find the people in that other town just exactly the same." And so we make some choices to a certain degree about how we see God and about how we see the world. And I think the choices that we make about the God that we believe in affects how we see the world on a day-to-day basis. So, point one. Point two. What is faith that works in Unitarian Universalism? What does it mean? How does it work? When I define faith in Unitarian Universalism, people ask me what faith means to me, and I say, faith for me is having hope in the face of suffering. It is being able to recognize that suffering is a part of the human condition, that we all experience in our life at some point, some kind of suffering. And faith is when we can look at it head on, square in the eyes, and still have hope. Maybe the reason why we have that kind of faith or that kind of hope is because someone in the midst of our suffering offered us something wonderful. A touch, love, brownies, a casserole, a phone call, a card. Maybe that's why we're able in the face of suffering to look at it dead on and say, I have faith that there's a better time for me, that this too indeed shall pass. So, point three, and then my 5 minutes are probably varyingly up. Afterlife, ghosts, and the paranormal. What happens to your soul when you die? Is there really going to be a day of judgment? And is there afterlife or reincarnation? Ready? When people ask me about Unitarian Universalism and the afterlife, I often say, if you asked everyone in our congregation, we would probably give you a different answer. But I like to tell a story, because I'm a preacher. So when you ask me about my beliefs of what happens in the afterlife, I like to tell a story that I think came from Rumi, but Marlon might correct me. I think it came from Rumi. But the idea is that imagine that we, before we are born, are part of a river, a great river that's flowing downstream. And as this river comes to a cliff and falls over the cliff and becomes a waterfall, that's the moment in which we are born. And as the water falls over this cliff for a certain period of time, the spray separates for a while and believes that it is separate from the river itself as it's falling for a certain period of time, and that to me is like our life. And then when our life is over, we gather back into that pool at the bottom of the waterfall and flow on back down the river. Amen.